bratty teens harassing me at a mall had no idea I was their new landlord. The laughter hit me like a slap across the face as I stood in line at Panda Express, just trying to grab some orange chicken for lunch. "Oh my god, look at this guy," one of them said, loud enough for half the food court to hear. "Is he seriously wearing cargo shorts in 2024? I didn't turn around immediately. Maybe they weren't talking about me. Maybe I could just order my food and disappear into the crowd of weekend mall shoppers. "And those New Balance sneakers with the Velcro straps," another voice chimed in. "What is he, like 50? 35, actually, but thanks for asking." I felt my face flush as I realized the group of teenagers behind me had definitely zeroed in on me as their afternoon entertainment. The line moved forward, and I stepped up to order, hoping they'd lose interest and move on to whatever teenagers do at malls these days. "Excuse me, sir," a girl's voice called out sweetly. Too sweetly. "Are you someone's dad? Because you're giving off major, divorced guy at Applebee's vibes." The eruption of laughter that followed made my stomach clench. I turned around and found myself face to face with 4 kids who couldn't have been older than 16 or 17. 3 girls and 1 boy, all designer clothes and perfectly styled hair, looking at me like I was some kind of zoo exhibit. "I'm sorry," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We were just wondering if you needed help finding the Skechers store," the apparent ringleader said. She was blonde, probably 17, with the kind of confidence that only comes from never being told no in your entire life. "They might have something more age-appropriate for you." Her friends dissolved into giggles again. I noticed one of them had her phone out, angled in my direction. "Are you recording me?" I asked. "Maybe," she said with a shrug. "This is going straight to TikTok. Mall dad having a midlife crisis. It's going to be viral." The cashier called next, and I stepped forward, my hands shaking slightly as I ordered. Behind me, I could hear them continuing their commentary. "I bet he drives a Honda Civic. No way, definitely a minivan. With soccer ball stickers. Guys, what if he's here looking for his wife who left him for someone younger?" Each comment felt like a needle. I paid for my food and moved to wait for my order, but they followed me, forming a loose semicircle like predators circling prey. "Hey, mall dad," the blonde one said. "Can you take a picture of us? You probably know how to work a camera, right? Since you're from the ancient times." I looked around the food court, hoping maybe a parent would appear to collect these kids, or mall security would notice the disturbance. But everyone else seemed to be deliberately avoiding eye contact, probably grateful they weren't the ones being targeted. "I just want to eat my lunch," I said quietly. "Ah, poor guy," one of the other girls said in a mock sympathetic voice. "Eating all alone. That's actually really sad." The boy in the group, who'd been quiet up until now, suddenly perked up. "Wait, Tyler, doesn't your building have a creepy old guy who lives alone? Maybe this is him." My blood ran cold. Not because of the creepy old guy comment, I was getting used to their insults by now. But because of that name. Tyler. Tyler Morrison. Apartment 4B. Rent 3 months behind. And just like that, everything changed. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. Tyler Morrison, Unit 4B, $3,847 in arrears. 3 months of excuses from his mother about late shifts and overtime that never materialized into actual rent payments. I'd been planning to start the eviction process on Monday. Tyler. The blonde girl, who I now realized might be Tyler herself, looked confused for a second before her face scrunched up in disgust. "Ew, no. I don't live in some gross apartment building. I'm talking about Tyler Chen from school." But the damage was done. My brain had already kicked into landlord mode, analyzing each face, trying to place them. 17 years old, designer clothes, entitled attitude, hanging out at Westfield Mall on a Saturday afternoon. The demographics fit perfectly for Riverside Gardens, the 200-unit complex I purchased 6 months ago in the trendy part of downtown. "Order for David," the Panda Express worker called out. I stepped forward to grab my food, and the blonde girl's eyes lit up with fresh ammunition. "David? Oh my god, that's even worse than I thought. You look exactly like a David." She turned to her phone, which was still recording. "Guys, meet David. He's having a sad lunch date with himself and some questionable fashion choices." I should have walked away. Should have taken my orange chicken and found a quiet corner to eat in peace. Instead, I found myself really looking at these kids for the first time, studying their faces like I was trying to solve a puzzle. The blonde was tall, probably around 5 feet 7 inches, with highlights that cost more than most people's monthly grocery budget. Her purse was Coach. I recognized it because my ex-wife had insisted on buying the same one 2 years ago. Designer jeans, perfectly manicured nails, the kind of casual confidence that screamed, "Daddy's money." "Madison, you're literally going to get us banned from the mall," one of the other girls said, but she was laughing as she said it. Madison. Another piece of the puzzle. The third girl was quieter, seeming less comfortable with the whole situation but not willing to speak up against her friends. She kept glancing around nervously, probably wondering if they were attracting too much attention. Smart instinct. And then there was the boy who'd mentioned Tyler. Asian kid, expensive sneakers, Air Jordans, probably $200, and a Supreme hoodie that I knew cost at least $300 because my nephew had begged his parents for one last Christmas. He had the same entitled energy as the girls but seemed to be trying to impress them rather than leading the charge. "This is actually kind of mean," the quiet girl finally said. "Maybe we should." "Oh, shut up, Emma," Madison snapped. "Don't be such a buzzkill. Look at him, he's probably loving the attention. When's the last time a group of girls talked to you, David?" Emma. Madison. Designer clothes, expensive accessories, and the kind of casual cruelty that comes from never facing real consequences. I was becoming more and more certain these kids lived in my building. "You know what?" I said suddenly, surprising myself. "You're absolutely right. I am having a sad lunch by myself." I pulled out my phone and opened up my property management app, pretending to scroll through social media. "Mind if I sit with you guys? You seem fun." The horror on Madison's face was immediate and priceless. Actually, we were just leaving. Oh, come on, I said, already walking toward an empty table. I promise I won't cramp your style too much. Besides, I'd love to hear more about where you all live. This neighborhood, right? I watched Madison's face carefully as I asked the question, and I didn't miss the tiny flicker of panic in her eyes. Bingo. The four of them exchanged glances, and I could practically see the group text conversation happening in real time through their expressions. Madison's confidence wavered for just a moment before she forced her smile back into place. Actually, we don't really live around here, she said quickly. We just come to this mall sometimes because, you know, it's whatever. Really? I settled into the chair across from them, opening my orange chicken container with deliberate slowness. That's interesting, because I could have sworn I've seen you around the Riverside Gardens area. You know, those new luxury apartments on Pine Street. Emma's face went completely white. Madison's jaw tightened. The Asian kid, who I was now pretty sure was Kevin Liu from Unit 7A, suddenly became very interested in his phone. Never heard of it, Madison said, but her voice had lost some of its earlier bite. I pulled out my phone again, this time genuinely opening my property management app. 200 units, and I was starting to remember exactly why some of these faces looked familiar. The management company had sent me photos from the security cameras last month after complaints about teenagers vaping in the parking garage and leaving trash around the pool area. Huh, I said, scrolling through my tenant list. Must be thinking of someone else then. It's just that you look exactly like someone I've seen in the building directory. I paused, pretending to think. Morrison, was it? Unit 4B. Madison's face went from white to red in about 2 seconds. I have no idea what you're talking about. But Kevin, because I was now certain it was Kevin Liu, had started to look genuinely nervous. His family's lease was up for renewal next month, and according to my files, they'd been late on rent 4 times in the past year. Not enough to evict, but definitely enough to decline renewal if I wanted to. Sorry, my mistake, I said cheerfully, taking a bite of orange chicken. I'm actually in real estate, so I meet a lot of families. Sometimes the faces blur together, you know. Real estate. Emma's voice was barely above a whisper. Property investment, mostly. I just bought this big complex downtown, 200 units, all kinds of families. It's been really interesting getting to know the community. I smiled at each of them in turn. Some of the tenants are absolutely wonderful. Respectful, responsible, the kind of people you want as neighbors. And then others. I let the sentence hang in the air while I took another bite. Madison had stopped recording entirely, her phone now face down on the table. The group that had been so animated and cruel just minutes before was now sitting in uncomfortable silence. What kind of real estate? Kevin asked, and I could hear the tremor in his voice. Oh, you know. Apartment buildings, mostly. I find it's important to really understand who's living in my properties. Background checks, references, social media presence. You'd be amazed what you can learn about people's character just by watching how they treat others. Emma made a small sound that might have been a whimper. The thing about being a landlord, I continued conversationally, is that you develop this responsibility for the community you're creating. You want to make sure you're housing people who share your values. People who understand respect, kindness, basic human decency. I pulled up the camera roll on my phone, scrolling back to the security footage screenshots I'd saved from last month's incident reports. For instance, I said, turning my phone so they could see a grainy but clearly recognizable image of Madison and Kevin smoking in the parking garage. When I see behavior that doesn't align with the kind of community I want to foster, it really makes me think about whether those individuals and their families are the right fit for my properties. Madison's mouth fell open. Now, I said, closing my phone and standing up with my food, I should probably let you kids get back to your day. Thanks for the lovely conversation. I started to walk away, then paused and turned back. Oh, and Madison. Tell your mom I'll be calling about that lease renewal meeting. Soon. The satisfaction I felt walking away from that table was intoxicating, but it lasted exactly 12 seconds. That's how long it took for me to realize what I'd just done. I'd used my position as their landlord to intimidate a group of teenagers. Teenagers who, yes, had been cruel and humiliating, but were still just kids being stupid kids. And I just threatened their family's housing security because my feelings got hurt. I made it to the Barnes and Noble before the guilt really hit. Sitting in one of their oversized chairs, pretending to flip through a magazine, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through my tenant files with fresh eyes. Madison Morrison, Unit 4B. Her mother, Linda Morrison, worked double shifts as a CNA at Mercy General. Divorced 3 years ago. The rent delays weren't because of irresponsibility, they were because Linda's ex-husband had stopped paying child support and she was drowning trying to cover everything alone. I'd seen the court documents when she'd applied for a payment plan. Kevin Liu, Unit 7A. His parents owned a small restaurant that had barely survived COVID. The late payments coincided exactly with the months when dining restrictions had been tightest. Mr. Liu had attached handwritten apologies to every delayed rent check, explaining in broken English how sorry he was and promising to never let it happen again. Emma, I still didn't have her last name, but I was pretty sure I'd seen her visiting Madison, probably lived in the building too. Most of these kids seemed to run in the same circle, the children of families who'd moved to Riverside Gardens because it was the nicest place they could afford in a good school district. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus, my property manager. Hey, got your message about starting evictions Monday. You sure about the Morrison unit? Linda's been keeping up with the payment plan perfectly. Seems harsh. I stared at the text. I hadn't sent Marcus any message about evictions. Then I realized, I'd been talking about planning to start the eviction process, but that was before I knew Linda was actually trying. Before I'd reviewed her file properly. Before I'd let a group of teenagers get under my skin and cloud my judgment. I was halfway through typing a response when I spotted them walking past the bookstore. Madison was crying, actual tears, not the fake dramatic kind teenagers usually deployed. Emma had her arm around her shoulders. Kevin was trailing behind, looking like he was about to throw up. They didn't see me, but I could hear fragments of their conversation as they passed. Have to tell my mom. She's going to kill me. Can't afford to move again. That last one hit me like a punch to the chest. Can't afford to move again. How many times had Madison's family been displaced? How many times had she watched her mother scramble to find a new place, pack up their lives, start over? My phone buzzed again. This time it was an unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Linda Morrison from Unit 4B. My daughter just called me in tears saying she met you at the mall and thinks we're going to be evicted. I know I've been behind on rent, but I've been following the payment plan exactly. Please, can we talk? I get off work at 11 p.m. tonight, but I can call you anytime after that. I can't lose this apartment. Please. The timestamp showed she'd sent it 3 minutes ago. Madison had called her mother immediately, probably while I was sitting here having my crisis of conscience. I pictured Linda Morrison getting that phone call in the middle of her shift, probably while she was helping elderly patients or changing bedpans, her daughter sobbing about how she'd messed up and now they were going to be homeless. Another text came in, I'm so sorry for whatever Madison did. She's a good kid, but she doesn't understand how hard things have been since the divorce. Please don't punish our family for her being a stupid teenager. I'll talk to her about whatever happened. A mother apologizing for her child, begging me not to destroy their lives, offering to work longer hours she probably couldn't handle to make up for whatever perceived slight I might have suffered. What kind of person was I becoming? I started typing a response, then stopped. Then started again. How do you explain to a terrified mother that you threatened her housing because her teenage daughter had made fun of your cargo shorts? My hands were shaking as I finally managed to type, Mrs. Morrison, please don't worry. Your lease is not in jeopardy. I'll call you tomorrow to clarify everything. There's been a misunderstanding. But even as I hit send, I knew this was bigger than a misunderstanding. This was about the kind of man I was choosing to be. The 3 dots indicating Linda Morrison was typing appeared on my screen, disappeared, then appeared again. I sat in that Barnes & Noble chair for what felt like an eternity, watching those dots pulse while imagining this woman trying to figure out what words might save her family's home. Finally, her response came through, thank you so much, Mr. Chen. I don't know what Madison did, but I promise you it will never happen again. She's grounded indefinitely and I'm making her get a job to understand the value of money. Please give me a chance to make this right. Before I could respond, another text arrived from a different unknown number, Mr. Chen, this is David Liu, Kevin's father. My son just told me about today. I am deeply ashamed and embarrassed by his behavior. Kevin will personally apologize and we will discuss appropriate consequences. Please don't let our family's housing situation suffer because of our failure as parents. We have worked so hard to build a life here. Then another one, this is Jennifer Walsh, Emma's mom, Unit 8C. Emma is writing you an apology letter right now. She said she didn't participate but didn't stop it either and knows that makes her just as responsible. We've raised her better than this and I don't know what got into her. She's been crying for an hour. Please let us know how we can make this right. My phone was buzzing every 30 seconds now. These kids had clearly gone into full panic mode and called their parents immediately. I could picture the scene, frantic phone calls from the mall parking lot, teenagers suddenly understanding that their harmless fun had very real consequences for their families. But it was the next message that really made my stomach drop, Mr. Chen, this is Madison again. I know I don't deserve a response, but I need you to know my mom doesn't have anything to do with this. She works 16-hour shifts at the hospital just so we can afford rent. She hasn't bought herself new clothes in 2 years because every penny goes to keeping us in that apartment. I was being a spoiled brat and taking out my own problems on you, and that's not your fault or hers. If you have to punish someone, please just punish me. Don't punish her. I had to read that message twice. This was the same kid who'd been recording me for TikTok an hour ago, mocking my appearance and orchestrating the whole humiliation. Now she was begging me to spare her mother and offering to take the consequences herself. My property management app buzzed with a notification. Marcus had updated Madison Morrison's file with a note, spoke with Linda Morrison 20 minutes ago. She called in tears asking about eviction procedures and timeline. Seems to think something happened today that puts her lease at risk. Linda's been exemplary tenant despite payment struggles, always communicates, follows through on commitments, keeps unit immaculate. Recommend renewal. I scrolled through Linda Morrison's full file for the first time in months. Every late payment came with a detailed explanation and a realistic timeline for catching up. Photos from the annual unit inspection showed their apartment was spotless, not just clean, but carefully maintained. The kind of tenant who probably spent her rare free time scrubbing baseboards and polishing fixtures because she understood how precious her housing was. The payment plan Marcus had mentioned was there in black and white, $200 extra per month until the arrears were cleared, scheduled to be complete in 6 weeks. She'd been following it perfectly, even paying $250 twice when she picked up extra shifts. There was also a note I'd forgotten about from 3 months ago, tenant reported and helped catch package thief in building lobby. Stayed late to give statement to police. Very invested in building community. Madison Morrison's mother wasn't just a struggling tenant, she was exactly the kind of resident I wanted in my building. My phone rang. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Mr. Chen. The voice was shaky, exhausted. This is Linda Morrison. I just got off my break and I had to call. I don't know what Madison did, but... Mrs. Morrison, I interrupted. Your lease is fine. I promise. I don't understand, Linda Morrison's voice cracked through the phone. Madison said you knew about her being disrespectful and that we were going to be evicted. She's never acted like this before, Mr. Chen. The divorce has been so hard on her, and I've been working so much. I could hear the exhaustion in every word. This woman was probably calling me from a hospital break room, stealing 5 minutes between patient care to beg for her family's stability. Mrs. Morrison, there's not going to be any eviction. Your daughter, she was rude to me at the mall today, but that has nothing to do with your lease. The silence stretched for so long I thought the call had dropped. She was rude to you. Linda's voice got very quiet. Oh God. Oh no. Mr. Chen, I am so sorry. What did she do? Before I could figure out how to answer that question, another call was coming in. The display showed, Marcus, property manager. Mrs. Morrison, can I call you back in just a few minutes? I need to take this call, but I promise you we'll work everything out. Yes, of course, thank you so much. I switched to Marcus's call. What's up? David, what the hell happened today? I've had 4 different families from Riverside Gardens call me in the past hour. They're all convinced they're about to be evicted because their kids were rude to someone at the mall. Marcus paused. Please tell me you didn't run into these kids while you were in landlord mode. My stomach sank. How bad is it? Bad. Kevin Lou's father called me crying. Actually crying, David. He wanted to know if paying 3 months rent in advance would convince you not to evict them. Emma Walsh's mom called asking if she could pay a deposit to hold their unit while they figured out how to make amends. And get this, Madison Morrison's mom just offered to clean the entire building lobby every week for free if it meant keeping their apartment. I rubbed my forehead. Jesus. David, what did you do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with another text from an unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Kevin. I know saying sorry doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know my parents saved for 3 years to move us to Riverside Gardens. My dad works 7 days a week at the restaurant and my mom does alterations until 2 a.m. every night. They sacrificed everything so I could go to good schools. I was showing off for girls and being an idiot, and now I might destroy everything they worked for. Please let me work for you to pay back whatever debt my stupidity created. I'll clean apartments or do landscaping or whatever you need. Just please don't punish my parents for raising such a disappointment. Marcus, I said, I think I really screwed up. Talk to me. I told him everything. The food court, the recording, the humiliation, and my realization about who these kids were. I told him about threatening Madison with her mother's lease renewal and watching Kevin's face when I mentioned background checks and social media presence. Oh, David. No. I know. These are good families. Kevin's parents are some of our most respectful tenants. Emma's mom volunteers to help elderly residents with grocery shopping. And Linda Morrison. Marcus sighed. She tips the maintenance crew at Christmas even though she can barely afford groceries. Another text came in. Mr. Chen, this is Emma Walsh. I've been staring at this message for 20 minutes trying to figure out what to say. I know I was a coward today. I should have told Madison to stop, but I was scared she'd turn on me instead. That doesn't make it okay. My mom raised me better and I let her down. She's going to make me volunteer at a homeless shelter, so I understand what it means when families lose their housing. I deserve whatever consequences you decide, but please don't let my cowardice hurt my mom. She's the best person I know. Marcus, they're just kids. Stupid, entitled kids, but they're 16 years old. Their parents are working themselves to death to give them opportunities, and I just used those families' housing security as a weapon because my feelings got hurt. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I recognized from my tenant directory, Kevin Lou's father. I have to take this, I told Marcus. Mr. Chen. The heavily accented voice was formal, careful. This is David Lou, Kevin's father. I must speak with you about today. My son has brought great shame to our family. Mr. Lou. Please, let me speak. Kevin told me everything. How he and his friends mocked you, recorded you, showed no respect. This is not how we raised him. His mother and I, we came to this country with nothing. We work every day to build good life for our children, to teach them respect and gratitude. Today we failed. The formality in his voice made it worse somehow. This man was humbling himself, apologizing for his child's behavior to preserve everything his family had worked for. Kevin is good boy, but today he forgot where he comes from. He forgot that respect is not something you give only to people who can help you. Respect is something you give because you are a human being talking to human being. I could hear Kevin's voice in the background, rapid and urgent, probably begging his father to let him talk. Mr. Lou shushed him sharply. I called to ask, what can we do to make this right? Kevin will work for you, cleaning, maintenance, whatever you need. No pay. And I will match whatever rent increase you require. We cannot afford to lose this apartment, Mr. Chen. Kevin's mother has medical condition that requires us to stay near Mercy General Hospital. Moving would mean. He trailed off, and I heard him take a shaky breath. That's when I realized the true scope of what I'd done. This wasn't just about embarrassing some bratty teenagers. I'd weaponized the housing insecurity that keeps families awake at night, the constant fear that one mistake could unravel everything they built. Mr. Lou, there's not going to be any rent increase or eviction. Your family's lease is secure. But Kevin said. Kevin misunderstood the situation. I was upset and I said things I shouldn't have said. Your son was disrespectful today, yes, but that doesn't affect your tenancy. The relief in his voice was audible. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Thank you so much. But still, Kevin must face consequences. We will handle this as family. After hanging up, I sat in that Barnes & Noble chair feeling like the worst kind of person. My phone showed 17 unread messages now, and Marcus was calling back. David, we have a bigger problem, he said immediately. Word is spreading through the building. Mrs. Patterson from 2A just called asking if the Morrison family was being evicted because she wanted to write a character reference. Apparently Linda helped her when her husband was in the hospital last month, bringing groceries and walking her dog every day for 3 weeks. Oh God. It gets worse. The tenant WhatsApp group is blowing up. Someone started a rumor that you're evicting families whose kids misbehave. Half the building thinks you're some kind of dictator, and the other half is panicking about their own teenagers. I checked my property management app and saw 3 new applications had been withdrawn in the past hour. The notes all said variations of found alternative housing, but Marcus was right, word was spreading. Mrs. Rodriguez from 5C wants to know if her son getting detention last week affects their lease renewal. The Yamadas are asking if their daughter's speeding ticket constitutes grounds for eviction. David, these people are terrified. Another text popped up, this one from Madison. Mr. Chen, I just want you to know my mom is driving to the hospital pharmacy to pick up extra shifts she doesn't need because she's scared we're going to need money for moving. She already works 16 hours a day and now she's going to work more because of what I did. I know you probably think I'm just a spoiled brat, but seeing my mom cry because she thinks she failed me is the worst feeling in the world. I'll delete the video and post an apology if that helps. I'll do anything. The video. I'd completely forgotten about that and everything else. Madison had been recording me, planning to post it to TikTok for laughs. Mall dad having a midlife crisis, that's what she'd called it. I opened TikTok for the first time in months and searched for Madison's username, which she'd helpfully mentioned during her commentary. Her profile was set to private now, but the bio still read, Riverside Gardens Princess Crown Sparkles, with a location tag for our neighborhood. My phone rang again. This time it was Linda Morrison calling back. Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry to bother you again, but I need to understand what happened. Madison won't stop crying and she's talking about transferring schools. She says she humiliated you publicly and now everyone in our building hates our family. Mrs. Morrison, that's not. She told me she made fun of your clothes and recorded you without permission. Mr. Chen, I raised her better than this. After her father left, I've been working so much that maybe I haven't been paying enough attention to how she's been acting, but this is not who she is. I could hear Madison in the background, her voice thick with tears. Tell him I'll pay him back for therapy or whatever because I probably gave him trauma. Madison honey, stop. Linda's voice got muffled as she covered the phone, then came back clear. Mr. Chen, she's convinced she's destroyed our lives. I don't know what to say to calm her down. That's when I realized the kids might be suffering more than I was. The magnitude of what I'd unleashed hit me fully when my phone rang again 20 minutes later. The caller ID showed Riverside Gardens, emergency line. Mr. Chen. It was Janet, our night security guard. We've got a situation here. There's about 15 residents gathered in the lobby, and they're asking to speak with you. Something about kids and evictions. I could hear voices in the background, worried, angry, confused. A whole crowd of my tenants had apparently congregated to figure out what was happening to their community. Janet, tell them. Hold on sir, Mrs. Patterson wants to talk to you. Before I could object, a shaky elderly voice came on the line. Mr. Chen, this is Dorothy Patterson from 2A. We're all very confused down here. Linda Morrison is one of the finest young women I've ever met, and people are saying you're evicting her family because her daughter was rude to you. Mrs. Patterson, that's not. Because if that's true, then I want you to know that when my Harold was dying last month, Linda brought me meals every single day. She walked my dog in the snow. She sat with me in the hospital waiting room for 6 hours when I was too scared to be alone. Her voice grew stronger, more indignant. That girl Madison helped carry my groceries up 3 flights of stairs when the elevator was broken. She wouldn't take a penny for it. So if you think you're going to punish that family for one teenage mistake. Mrs. Patterson, I interrupted. No one is being evicted. There's been a misunderstanding. Then why is Linda Morrison sitting in her car in the parking garage crying? Janet saw her on the security camera 20 minutes ago. She's afraid to come inside her own building. My stomach dropped. She's what? Sitting in her car. Been there since she got off work. Her daughter ran down to talk to her and now they're both crying in the parking garage. Half the building is ready to march to your office and demand an explanation. I could hear more voices in the background now, and someone was saying something about tenant rights and harassment. The situation was spiraling completely out of control. I'm coming over, I said. Tell everyone I'll be there in 20 minutes and we'll sort this out. But as I hung up, another text came in from Madison. Mr. Chen, my mom is scared to go inside because she thinks everyone knows we're the family that's getting evicted. Mrs. Chen from 6B already texted asking if we need help finding a new place. My mom is so embarrassed she can't face our neighbors. This is all my fault. Then another message, this one from Kevin, the whole school found out somehow. Jake Morrison posted about it on Instagram. He's Madison's ex and he's telling everyone she got her family evicted for being a bully. Now everyone's sharing stories about other stuff she's done. She called me crying saying she's never going back to school. I stared at that message, realizing the nightmare had expanded beyond just family housing situations. These kids were facing social destruction at school, public humiliation in their own building, and the complete unraveling of their family's security. My phone buzzed with a call from Marcus again. David, you need to see Channel 7's Twitter account. Someone posted about a revenge landlord story and tagged their investigative unit. This is about to go viral for all the wrong reasons. The satisfaction I'd felt walking away from those kids in the food court seemed like it had happened in another lifetime. Now I was sitting in a bookstore watching 4 teenage lives implode while their terrified parents scrambled to save everything they'd worked for. And it was entirely my fault. I was halfway to Riverside Gardens when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Is this David Chen? The voice was crisp, professional. This is Rebecca Martinez from Channel 7 News. We're investigating reports of a landlord using eviction threats to retaliate against tenants whose children engaged in typical teenage behavior. Do you have a comment? My blood turned to ice. I'm sorry, what? We received a tip about an incident at Westfield Mall today involving you and several teenagers who live in your property. Our source says you threatened their family's housing after the kids made some jokes. Can you confirm whether you've initiated eviction proceedings against the Morrison family in Unit 4B? No comment, I managed, and hung up immediately. But the damage was already spreading. My phone buzzed with a Twitter notification. Someone had tagged me in a post with the hashtags #RevengeLandlord and #HousingJustice. The tweet had already been shared 47 times in the past 10 minutes. I pulled into the Riverside Gardens parking garage and immediately spotted Linda Morrison's car. She was sitting in the driver's seat while Madison stood outside the passenger door, both of them clearly in the middle of an intense conversation. When Madison saw my car, her face went completely white and she said something urgent to her mother. Linda Morrison stepped out of her car, and I was struck by how small she looked. This woman who worked 16-hour shifts as a nurse, who her neighbors described as a saint, looked absolutely defeated. She'd changed out of her scrubs into jeans and a faded sweater, but I could see the exhaustion in every line of her body. Mr. Chen, she called out as I parked. Thank you for coming. Madison hung back by their car, looking like she wanted to disappear into the concrete. Even from 30 feet away, I could see she'd been crying hard. Her face was blotchy and swollen, nothing like the confident girl who'd been recording me 6 hours ago. Mrs. Morrison, I owe you an apology, I said immediately. Your daughter was rude to me today, but I handled the situation completely inappropriately. She told me what she did, Linda said quietly. The recording, the comments about your appearance, following you around the food court. Mr. Chen, I am mortified. But I need to know, are we going to lose our home? Before I could answer, the garage elevator opened and Mrs. Patterson emerged, followed by Kevin Liu and his parents, Emma Walsh and her mother, and about 6 other tenants I recognized. Word had clearly spread that I was here, and they'd come down to witness whatever confrontation was about to happen. There he is, Mrs. Patterson announced, her voice echoing in the concrete space. Mr. Chen, these people deserve answers. Mr. Liu stepped forward, his face grave. We came to support Morrison family, he said in his careful English. Linda is good neighbor. Good person. If you evict her, you evict heart of this building. Nobody is being evicted, I said, my voice carrying across the garage. There's been a terrible misunderstanding. Then why, Emma's mother spoke up, did my daughter spend the afternoon writing her last will and testament because she thought we'd be homeless by Christmas? I looked around at the faces gathered in that parking garage, worried parents, embarrassed teenagers, elderly neighbors who'd come down in their robes and slippers. The community I'd wanted to foster as a landlord was fracturing because I'd let my ego take control. My phone buzzed again. Rebecca Martinez from Channel 7 had sent a follow-up text, Mr. Chen, we go to air at 11 p.m. tonight. This story is running with or without your comment. Standing in that parking garage surrounded by my tenants felt like being in the center of a slow-motion explosion. Every face looking back at me represented a family whose stability I'd threatened because some teenagers hurt my feelings. Mrs. Morrison, I said, raising my voice so everyone could hear, your lease is secure. Madison, your family is not being evicted. There was never any real threat to your housing. Then why, Mrs. Patterson demanded, did you tell these children their behavior would affect their family's leases? Before I could answer, my phone started ringing again. The display showed Mom, and I realized with horror that someone had probably found my parents' contact information online. I declined the call, but not before several people noticed. Mr. Chen, Linda Morrison said, her voice shaking, I need to understand what happened today so I can figure out how to fix it. Madison finally spoke up from behind her mother. Mom, I told you. I was being a terrible person and Mr. Chen got mad and said he owned our building and... You didn't tell me he threatened our housing, Linda interrupted, turning to face her daughter. You said you were rude and he was upset, not that he used our lease as retaliation. The distinction clearly mattered to Linda, and I could see why. As a tenant, she lived with the constant awareness that her family's stability depended on maintaining a good relationship with their landlord. The idea that her teenage daughter's behavior could destroy that must have been terrifying. Kevin's father stepped forward. Mr. Chen, my son says you showed them pictures from security cameras. Is this true? I felt my face flush. I showed them one screenshot from a parking garage incident last month. I was trying to make a point about accountability. A point? Emma's mother's voice rose. You use surveillance footage to intimidate children. My phone buzzed with another call from Rebecca Martinez. Then a text from Marcus, David, don't say anything else to anyone. Channel 7 is setting up outside the building. Someone called them about the parking garage meeting. I looked around at the faces surrounding me and realized I was about to make everything infinitely worse. Mrs. Walsh, Mrs. Morrison, Mr. and Mrs. Liu, I said carefully, I made a serious error in judgment today. I let my emotions cloud my responsibilities as a landlord, and I'm deeply sorry. Sorry doesn't fix this, Mrs. Patterson said sharply. These families spent the evening terrified they'd be homeless. Linda Morrison picked up extra shifts tonight because she thought she'd need moving money. Wait, I said, looking at Linda. You picked up more shifts tonight? Linda's face crumpled slightly. I called the hospital after Madison told me what happened. Asked if I could work a double tomorrow and take on weekend overtime. If we were going to lose the apartment, I needed to save money for deposits and moving trucks. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. This woman had already been working herself to exhaustion, and my moment of petty revenge had driven her to schedule even more hours away from her daughter. Mrs. Morrison, please cancel those shifts. I'll pay you whatever you would have earned. You'll what? Madison looked confused. Before I could explain, car doors slammed in the distance and I could see news van headlights reflecting off the garage walls. Rebecca Martinez and her camera crew had arrived. Everyone needs to get upstairs right now, I said urgently. There's a news crew here and this is about to become a much bigger problem. But it was too late. I could hear voices echoing from the garage entrance, and bright lights were already illuminating the far end of the space. Mrs. Patterson looked toward the lights, then back at me. Mr. Chen, what exactly have you gotten our building into? The news crew spotlights turned our parking garage into a fishbowl, and I watched 17 of my tenants suddenly realize they were about to be on television. Mrs. Patterson immediately started smoothing her hair, while Kevin's parents exchanged rapid words in Mandarin and began backing toward the elevator. Mr. Chen. Rebecca Martinez's voice echoed off the concrete as she strode toward us, a cameraman trailing behind her. Rebecca Martinez, Channel 7 News. Can you explain why you're meeting with tenants in a parking garage at 9:30 p.m.? This is private property, I said, stepping forward. You need to leave. We're investigating reports that you've been using eviction threats to retaliate against tenants' children. Mrs. Morrison, is it true that you were told your family would be evicted because of your daughter's behavior? Linda Morrison's face went white under the camera lights. We're just talking. Mom, don't say anything, Madison whispered urgently, grabbing her mother's arm. But Rebecca Martinez was already pivoting to her next target. Mr. Liu, did Mr. Chen show your son surveillance footage as intimidation? Are you concerned about privacy violations in this building? Mr. Liu looked like a deer in headlights. His wife stepped protectively in front of him and said something sharp in Mandarin that definitely wasn't meant for broadcast. Turn the camera off, Mrs. Patterson commanded with surprising authority. This is a private family matter. Ma'am, this is a public story about landlord abuse and housing discrimination, Rebecca shot back. The public has a right to know when property owners weaponize housing security. My phone was buzzing incessantly now. Text after text from Marcus, do not talk to them. Lawyer is en route. Get inside now. But I could see the panic spreading across my tenants' faces as they realized their private housing crisis was about to become tomorrow morning's news. Emma was crying again, Kevin looked like he was going to be sick, and Madison kept whispering, I'm sorry, to her mother. Ms. Martinez, I said, stepping directly in front of the camera, if you want to interview me, fine. But leave these families alone. So you admit there's something to interview you about? Before I could answer, the elevator opened again and Marcus emerged with a woman in an expensive suit who was clearly moving fast despite her heels clicking on concrete. David, stop talking, the woman called out as she approached. Ms. Martinez, I'm Sarah Chen, no relation, representing Mr. Chen in Riverside Gardens. This interview is over. Mrs. Morrison, Rebecca Martinez called out, ignoring the lawyer, Channel 7 has received reports that your family is being evicted in retaliation for teenage pranks. Can you confirm? Nobody is being evicted. Linda Morrison suddenly exploded, her voice cracking with exhaustion and frustration. My daughter was cruel to this man and he got angry and said something stupid and now everyone wants to make it into some huge story but we just want to go home. The cameraman kept rolling as Linda continued, yes, I was scared about losing our apartment. Yes, Madison was wrong to treat someone that way. But this man has never been anything but fair to us as tenants, and I don't understand why everyone wants to destroy people's lives over one bad afternoon. Madison was openly sobbing now. Mom, stop, please. No, Madison. I'm tired of being afraid. Linda turned toward the camera with a fierceness I hadn't seen before. I work 16-hour shifts to afford our rent, and my daughter doesn't understand how hard that is. Maybe she needed to see what it would mean to lose everything. Maybe we both learned something today. The garage fell completely silent except for the hum of the news camera and Madison's muffled crying. Rebecca Martinez looked like she was recalculating her entire story. Mrs. Morrison, are you saying you support Mr. Chen's actions today? I'm saying, Linda said firmly, that everyone involved made mistakes, but the only people who should be talking about it are the people who live here. Then she looked directly at me. Mr. Chen, can we please finish this conversation somewhere private? Away from cameras and neighbors and reporters. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Tyler Chen from Roosevelt High. Someone posted a video of my landlord threatening kids at the mall and everyone thinks it's hilarious. Are you the same David Chen? This is so embarrassing. I stared at the message, realizing the ripple effects were still spreading in directions I hadn't even considered. The text from Tyler Chen hit me like ice water. My nephew had somehow connected the dots between the viral video and his embarrassing uncle. I could picture him sitting in his dorm room, watching his friends share and mock footage of his own family member being humiliated by teenagers. Mr. Chen, Rebecca Martinez pressed, we have reports that video of today's mall incident has been circulating online. Can you confirm? There's a video. Mrs. Patterson interrupted, looking directly at Madison. Child, please tell me you didn't put this man's humiliation on the internet. Madison's face somehow went even whiter. I deleted it. I swear I deleted it after I realized who he was. But you posted it first. Rebecca's voice sharpened with reporter instinct. Ms. Martinez, we're done here, my lawyer said firmly, stepping between the camera and Madison. These are minors and you need consent. I posted it for like 10 minutes, Madison whispered, her words barely audible. Just to my close friends list. But Jake screenshotted it and... She looked at her mother with pure devastation. Mom, it's everywhere. All over school social media. People are calling Mr. Chen Mall Dad and making memes. The blood drained from Linda Morrison's face. Madison Rose Morrison, what have you done? My phone buzzed again. This time it was my business partner, Tom. David, what the hell is Mall Dad Goes Nuclear? My daughter just sent me a TikTok compilation and your face is in the thumbnail. Call me immediately. Kevin spoke up for the first time since the cameras arrived. Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. After Jake posted Madison's video, everyone started sharing their own videos from today. There's like a whole hashtag now. His voice cracked. They're making fun of your clothes and saying you looked like you were about to cry. The humiliation of the food court was now preserved forever, shared thousands of times, turned into entertainment for strangers across the internet. But worse than my embarrassment was watching these kids realize the full scope of what they'd unleashed. How many videos? I asked quietly. Emma finally spoke, her voice tiny. I counted at least 12 different angles before I stopped looking. Everyone was recording after Madison started. There's one from when you were ordering food, one from when you sat down with us. She swallowed hard. One from when you walked away looking upset. 12 videos. A dozen different teenagers had documented my public humiliation and turned it into viral content. The moment I'd felt most vulnerable and alone was now entertainment for thousands of strangers. The compilation video has 340,000 views, Kevin added miserably. Someone put sad music over it and called it When Divorced Dads Attack. It's horrible, Mr. Chen. People are saying really mean stuff in the comments. Rebecca Martinez was frantically texting someone, probably her producer, realizing this story was bigger than landlord retaliation. Mr. Chen, what's your response to becoming an involuntary internet meme? My response, I said, looking around at the faces of my tenants, people whose lives I disrupted because I couldn't handle teenage cruelty, is that I need to figure out how to undo the damage I've caused. But even as I said it, I knew some things couldn't be undone. The videos would live forever online. My nephew would always remember his uncle as Mall Dad. And 4 families would always know their landlord had threatened their homes because his feelings got hurt. The elevator dinged behind us, and 3 more tenants emerged, drawn by the commotion and camera lights. This nightmare was still growing. The elevator doors opened to reveal Mrs. Chen from 6B, Mr. Rodriguez from 5C, and the Yamada family from 3A. Mrs. Chen took one look at the news camera and started backing toward the elevator, but it was too late. Mrs. Chen. Rebecca Martinez called out. You live in this building, have you experienced any retaliation from your landlord? I don't speak to reporters, Mrs. Chen said firmly in accented English, but her teenage daughter Lily stepped forward. Are you here about the mall dad thing? Lily asked, pulling out her phone. Because that video is literally everywhere at school. Jake Morrison has been showing it to everyone, saying his ex-girlfriend got her landlord so mad he's evicting people. My stomach dropped. Jake Morrison. Madison's ex, Lily explained, seemingly oblivious to the horror spreading across Madison's face. He's been posting stories all day about how Madison finally got what was coming to her. He screenshotted her original TikTok before she deleted it, and now he's telling everyone she made fun of some random guy who turned out to be her landlord. Jake's doing what? Madison's voice was barely a whisper. Kevin pulled out his own phone, scrolling frantically. Madison, it's worse than that. He posted a whole thread about, oh no. Oh no, Madison, don't look. But Madison was already grabbing for his phone. Her mother tried to stop her, but Madison had already seen whatever Jake had posted. The sound she made was somewhere between a gasp and a sob. He posted screenshots of our private messages, Madison said, her voice breaking. From when we were dating. He's telling everyone I called other kids losers and scholarship kids and... She looked around the garage at her neighbors' faces. Mrs. Patterson, he posted about how I complained about you playing your TV too loud. Mr. Lou, he shared when I said your restaurant smelled up the hallway. The silence in the parking garage was deafening. Mrs. Patterson's face had gone very cold, while Mr. Lou looked like he'd been physically slapped. Madison, her mother said quietly, is this true? It was private. I was just venting to my boyfriend, I never meant. You said my family's restaurant smells. Mrs. Lou spoke for the first time, her voice tight with hurt. We work so hard to be good neighbors. Rebecca Martinez was practically vibrating with excitement. So this isn't just about today's incident, there's a pattern of disrespectful behavior toward other tenants. Turn off the camera, Linda Morrison said firmly. Right now. Mrs. Morrison, the public has a right. The public has a right to nothing when it comes to my daughter's private conversations, Linda snapped, stepping toward the reporter with a fierceness that made everyone step back. You're here because you thought you had a story about an abusive landlord, but what you actually found is a bunch of families trying to work through a complicated situation that doesn't concern you. My phone buzzed with a text from Tyler Chen, Uncle David, please tell me you didn't actually threaten to evict people. Mom is freaking out and Dad wants to know if this affects the family business reputation. Before I could process that fully, another message appeared from an unknown number. Mr. Chen, this is Jake Morrison, Madison's ex. I heard you're evicting them and I wanted you to know she totally deserves it. I have tons more screenshots if you want them for evidence. I stared at the message, realizing that Jake Morrison was actively trying to sabotage Madison's family's housing situation. He was weaponizing their breakup to destroy not just Madison's reputation, but her mother's stability. Mrs. Morrison, I said, we need to talk privately. Now. There are things happening that you need to know about. But as I spoke, my phone started ringing with another unknown number, and I could see Marcus frantically trying to get my attention from across the garage, holding up his own phone with what looked like a very urgent message on the screen. The nightmare was still expanding, and I was beginning to realize that the teenager's cruel behavior in the food court might have been just the beginning of something much darker. I answered the ringing phone while watching Marcus wave urgently at me from across the garage. Is this David Chin? The voice was young, nervous. This is Ashley Kim from Roosevelt High's student newspaper. We're doing a story about cyberbullying and viral shaming for our next issue, and we wanted to get your perspective on. You're a high school student. I interrupted, incredulous. How did you get my number? Jake Morrison gave it to us. He said you'd want to comment about Madison Morrison's history of bullying other students. He has screenshots going back months of her making fun of people's clothes, families, housing situations. I hung up immediately, but the damage was clear. Jake Morrison wasn't just sharing private conversations, he was actively shopping the story to anyone who would listen, trying to destroy Madison's life and drag me deeper into the mess. David. Marcus called out, jogging over with his phone extended. You need to see this right now. The screen showed a Facebook post from Westfield Mall community page with over 200 comments. The post itself was a grainy photo of me sitting alone at the food court table, captioned, local landlord spotted having meltdown at mall after being roasted by teens. Sources say he's now evicting their families in revenge. Is this what our community has come to? Sources. I looked up at Marcus. What sources? Keep reading, he said grimly. The top comment, with 47 likes, read, my daughter goes to Roosevelt High and she said this guy literally showed up with security camera footage to threaten kids. The girls involved are too scared to even go to school now. Someone should call the police. Another comment, I live near those apartments and I heard he owns like 6 buildings around town. How many other families is he targeting? This is terrifying. But it was the most recent comment that made my blood run cold. Update, Channel 7 is at the building right now interviewing tenants. Apparently the landlord called a mandatory meeting in the parking garage to intimidate everyone. This is insane. Mandatory meeting? I looked around the garage at the confused faces of my tenants. I never called a mandatory anything. Rebecca Martinez was speaking rapidly into her earpiece, clearly getting updated information from her producer. When she finished, she turned back to our group with renewed energy. Mr. Chen, we're receiving reports that you own multiple properties throughout the district and that this isn't the first time tenants have complained about retaliatory behavior. Would you like to respond to allegations that you've used housing insecurity as a weapon against other families? That's completely false, I said, but even as I spoke, I could see doubt creeping into my tenants' faces. The suggestion that this was part of a pattern made everything look worse. Mrs. Patterson stepped forward, her voice sharp with suspicion. Mr. Chen, exactly how many properties do you own? Because if you've been doing this elsewhere. I own 2 buildings, I said quickly. This one and a small complex near downtown. I've never had any complaints about retaliation. But Madison was staring at her phone with growing horror. Mom, she whispered, Jake posted our address online. He's telling people exactly where we live and which apartment is ours. Linda Morrison went white. He what? Kevin was scrolling frantically through his own social media. He's posting about all of us. Our building address, our unit numbers. Madison, he's trying to get people to come here. As if summoned by his words, I heard car engines echoing from the garage entrance. Bright headlights swept across the concrete as 3 vehicles pulled into the parking area, music thumping from open windows. Oh no, Emma breathed. Those are kids from school. The situation I'd started 6 hours ago at a mall food court was now spiraling into something completely beyond my control, and Jake Morrison was apparently determined to make sure it destroyed as many lives as possible. The cars that pulled into our garage weren't just random kids from school. As they piled out, I recognized the deliberate organization. Someone had clearly planned this as a confrontation. Jake Morrison emerged from the passenger seat of a lifted pickup truck, his phone already out and recording as he approached our group. "There's the famous mall dad," he called out, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "And there's my pathetic ex-girlfriend who finally got what she deserved." Behind him, at least 8 teenagers were filming with their phones, clearly hoping to catch whatever drama was about to unfold. But what Jake Morrison hadn't counted on was walking into a parking garage full of protective parents and a news crew. "Young man," Mrs. Patterson's voice cut through the noise like a blade, "you need to leave this property immediately." Jake laughed, but I could see the uncertainty in his eyes as he took in the scene, the camera crew, the parents, the obvious tension that had nothing to do with teenage social media drama. "Actually," I said, stepping forward, "Jake Morrison, you're exactly who I need to see." I pulled out my phone and opened the screenshots Marcus had just sent me. "Did you know that posting someone's private address online with intent to harass them is considered cyberstalking under California law? My attorney here can explain the details." Jake's confidence wavered as my lawyer stepped into view, her expression professional and completely unamused. "Additionally," I continued, "encouraging people to come to a private residence to confront tenants constitutes criminal harassment. The police are already on their way. Mrs. Patterson called them when you posted our building address." That was a bluff, but Jake didn't need to know that. "But here's what's really interesting, Jake," I said, scrolling through my property management files. "Morrison, Unit 4B. Your last name is also Morrison, and Madison mentioned an ex-boyfriend. Tell me, are you Linda Morrison's nephew? The one who's been staying in her apartment for the past 3 months without being on the lease?" The color drained from Jake's face. Madison's sharp intake of breath told me I'd guessed correctly. "Because unauthorized long-term guests are actually a lease violation," I continued. "And orchestrating harassment campaigns against other tenants from my property? That's grounds for immediate eviction." Linda Morrison turned to stare at Jake with dawning realization. "You've been living in my apartment rent-free for 3 months, and this is how you repay that kindness. By trying to destroy our housing." "Aunt Linda, I was just..." "You were trying to make my daughter homeless," Linda said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "You posted our address online. You shared her private conversations. You brought strangers to our building." She stepped closer to Jake, and despite being half his size, her presence filled the garage. "You know what it means for us to lose this apartment. You know I work 16-hour shifts to afford the rent. And you tried to destroy that because Madison broke up with you." The teenagers who'd come with Jake were slowly backing toward their cars, clearly realizing they'd walked into something much more serious than they'd expected. "Jake Morrison," I said formally, "you have 24 hours to remove your belongings from Unit 4B. If you're found on this property after that, you'll be arrested for trespassing." Rebecca Martinez lowered her microphone, apparently recognizing that her story about landlord abuse had turned into something entirely different. "Mrs. Morrison," I said, turning to Linda, "your lease renewal will be ready Monday morning. 2-year term, rent locked at current rates." Madison looked up at me through her tears. "Even after everything I did?" "You made mistakes," I said. "We all did today. But your family belongs here." As the news crew packed up and Jake Morrison slunk away with his followers, the parking garage finally began to empty. My tenants headed back to their apartments, the crisis resolved, their community intact. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being the better person.